In 1952, the people of Panama City elected a lab tech from a chemical company. His name was Jack Mashburn. He was 22 years old. His father went to him and gave him a piece of advice. He said, "Son, do what is right, regardless of the consequences. I'll always love you, no matter what the outcome is. But you choose to do right." Jack Mashburn was from the right part of the state. He was young and talented. He was a blue dog Democrat who had a brilliant future in front of him. All he had to do was play by the rules of the system. And the world, this entire world right here, would be his oyster. But during his first legislative session, while he's trying to preserve St. Andrews State Park, he learned something that disturbed him. For the most part, from Brownsville, Texas, all across the entire Gulf of Mexico, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and yes, the great state of Florida, there was hardly a grain of beach sand that an African American could walk without being arrested. And then, 22-year-old Jack Mashburn does something extraordinary. He decides, I'm going to change that. Immediately, he's threatened. The business leaders in his community tell him, "You'll only serve one term." They tell him, "You are jeopardizing a bright future." They told him to stand down or else. Jack Mashburn couldn't be intimidated, and he couldn't be bought. He stood his ground, and he changed that law. Hallelujah. And true to their word, his opponents took him out at the very next election. He would serve one single term in office. Now, Jack's story is important because it's a test of character. Not Jack's, it's a test of our character. Because you either hear that story as a cautionary tale, or you hear it as I hear it. The tale of a man who put principle above politics, who knew that what is wrong must be put right, and that change does not wait for a more convenient time. Do you know how many of us members have served in this chamber? How many rules chairmen, appropriations chairmen, and yes, how many speakers with their portraits on the wall, who during their entire legislative career have never done anything as meaningful and courageous as a 22-year-old kid who served one term and never chaired a single committee? Members, I'm happy to say that Jack Mashburn's still with us. I'm even happier to say that he's actually with us in the chamber today. Please join me in welcoming him back to the Florida House of Representatives for the first time in 62 years, Representative Jack Mashburn. Members, the crux of everything I've said today has been said before, far more eloquently. Our founding fathers, they struggled with the desire to create a long-lasting democracy, knowing that the people who would lead it, just like all of us, are flawed and left to our own devices, all too often will choose self-interest. So they built a government that protected against that. We call it the separation of powers and checks and balances. But because they owned that one reality, that one truth, because they were willing to face and identify the enemy and fight it, they built what all of us know today is the greatest governmental experiment in the history of the world. Members, amazing accomplishments are within our reach. Just look at Jack Mashburn, 22 years old, in the Deep South, 2 years before Brown v. Board of Education and 12 years before the Civil Rights Act. It's an amazing and inspirational story. And yet, even as I speak, sitting right here in this chamber and gallery, there are skeptics and critics who are saying in their head that sad, pathetic drumbeat of, I've heard this before. Good luck, really, good luck. It is what it is, and you're never going to change it. Members, they're wrong. They are wrong. We can choose to sacrifice our self-interest. We can choose to serve a purpose higher than ourselves. We can stand and fight, regardless of the consequence, regardless of the cost, regardless of the opposition. Let us prove that we're not the enemies of the story, but we're the heroes. And let our legacy be this: we told the truth and we fought for justice. And maybe, just maybe, long into the future, somebody will ask one of you to come back to this chamber so they can tell your heroic story.